Today's video is going to be slightly different than the videos that I've been posting up until this point. Similar to the lidded box video maybe, or my intro, in that there's an actual voiceover for this one. The reason for that is this bowl that I'm working on is inspired by another YouTuber, a ceramicist by the name of Florian Gadsby. My wife and I have been watching Florian's work on YouTube for quite a while. She does ceramics work and I do my woodworking, among other things. And Florian has been someone that we have fallen in love with during our evening YouTube viewership. The videos that he produces are quite enjoyable. They're very meditative. They're very introspective. And I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of those videos. And so I've been inspired by Florian's ceramic work to create this walnut bowl. Now, currently I'm getting the bowl itself attached to the lathe. The initial turning of this, you'll find out here in just a moment, did not go quite as expected. I'm using a screw chuck, which is my normal method of turning, where you insert a screw into one side of the blank after drilling a hole and use that to secure it to the chuck, and then turn the piece with that screw holding the wood mounted to the lathe. However, I got some pretty significant tear out where I inserted the screw into the blank, and so it actually began stripping out and not holding the walnut to the lathe. You can definitely see as I remove this, it's very wobbly, it's very loose, and then it just falls right off. There you can see the rather large hole in the walnut that was bored out. So now we're switching. I mated the bowl to a piece of a 2x6 that I am using as a sacrificial foot for the bowl, and now we can turn safely without stripping out the screw for the walnut. The sacrificial 2x6 has a mortise drilled in it that a chuck can expand into, which is one of the usual ways I secure wood to the lathe. And so now we're just going to start turning it around and developing our shape. I think the thing I love the most about Florian's work is the introspective nature that he has in his videos as he explores the forms that he's working with. He does a lot more production work in his ceramics than I do. Most of my pieces that I create are one-offs or small pieces of a set, but the form that he creates, the sharp angular lines and the very minimalist design profile that he uses for the bowls and other pieces that he creates captured my imagination. So part of this project is exploring that form in wood instead of clay. And I'm quite pleased with how this piece turned out. I think it actually turned out very well. The walnut, once I got it to behave, really lended itself, I think, to the form. The grain in the walnut is exciting enough that the very simplistic form of the bowl is not, I guess, overshadowed by the grain versus the bowl itself having a more unique shape. You'll notice when I'm turning and it switches to the other camera view, had a bit of a mishap with the camera I use for that other angle, and it decided to shoot in portrait mode instead of landscape, which means the view is quite a bit narrower. Thankfully, I figured out why that happens, so I shouldn't run into that issue again, but for this video, it'll be a little different. I'm still working on getting my traditional turning tools rehab. They are a little older, a little more beat up. I've talked about that in one or two of my videos. The set that I got when I first started turning has seen better days, but it's close to 15 some odd years old now. So it's, it was just a starter set, but I think I'm close to rehabbing them and getting some of the grinds set properly once again. We're moving over to the sanding portion of the project now. I do tend to cut out a lot of the sanding that I do in these videos, mostly because it's very repetitive. It's very uninteresting to watch, I think, which is why I edit it out. But for me, as the person turning it, the sanding is sometimes some of the more enjoyable portions of the turning. I find it very meditative. I find it very calming to sit and sand the piece, working the grain to a higher and higher polish, revealing the hidden beauty within the wood. I think that's another thing that draws me to Florian's work is the reduction firing method that he uses. Leaves a very fascinating finished piece, but when it starts, it's just a simple kind of uniform color, and that tends to be something you run into when you're working with wood as well. The outside of the wood can be very simple, especially if you're working with something that still has like bark on it, or something that's been sitting around for a long time and has seen, you know, discoloration from the sun, bleaching, things like that. You can end up with a very dull and kind of boring piece of wood that looks like it's destined for the fire pit, and then you cut it open, you turn it on the lathe, you take a look at the piece beyond the surface, and you're left with a beautiful product of nature that really can elicit responses of wonder when you're working with certain woods, especially highly figured pieces. This walnut is not like curly walnut, or it's not anything too exotic. It's just a piece of walnut offcut from a board for another project I had worked on many years ago that had been sitting around kind of just waiting for something to happen to it. And this piece sort of just came to me. The pottery work that my wife does is, we joke, it's very similar to wood turning, just on a different axis. It's almost the reverse, you could say, of wood turning, where wood turning is a subtractive process. You are turning away the outside layers to reveal things underneath, whereas pottery is more of an additive process where you build up the form. You build it out of a simple lump into something more when you're throwing it on the wheel or working with it by hand. But in the end, it is I think a sister craft to wood turning, wherein you are taking a very simple bit of raw material, something that a lot of people might overlook, or things that people might cast aside, whether it be a hunk of firewood or just a lump of dirt. And through skill, through the use of your own hands, you are able to transform what was a raw and boring piece of natural material into something filled with beauty and filled with natural wonder. I absolutely adore the way the grain flows on this piece. It turned out very, very well. The hollowing of this piece was relatively simple. I wanted to keep the inside of the bowl a relatively simple, scooped out shape. No overhangs, no ledges, no sharp lines. It's just a simple, flowing curve to the bottom of the bowl. I find that the simple shape lends itself to the tactile experience of the piece. One of the things that I enjoy about my work is being able to hold it in my hands and experience it through touch. The smooth surface of the wood that has been highly polished, the warmth that it seems to develop as you hold it in your hands. It's one of the things I truly love about working with wood and working with natural materials. When you're working with natural materials, you're beholden to what nature created, and being able to take a rough product from a tree to something warm, something tactile, something that calls to you to be reached out and picked up, is a true pleasure in the craft. It's what I strive for when I'm making. I want someone to look at one of my pieces sitting on a table or sitting on a shelf and immediately think, I want to pick that up. I want to touch that. I want to feel that. I want to experience it with my senses. It calls to me. I want my pieces to evoke emotion, not just be utilitarian or disposable. And so that's what I strive for when I'm working. Again, the sanding process is probably something that I spend more time on than I could if I wanted to do less. But I find that the pieces that I make, I don't know, it's an interesting sort of thought to sit with. There are finishes processes that might make this quicker, but to me, the journey of the piece through the sanding process, through the turning, through all of it, is part of what's enjoyable about it. And so rushing the sanding, to me, feels like I am doing a disservice to the piece when I am making it. I think that goes into another thing that I've enjoyed in the content creators that I watch on YouTube. The Florian Gadsby, Mark Spagnuolo, Matt Cremona, some of these other YouTubers that have been doing it for a lot longer than I have, but have also shared a similar love of the process in their making. And that's what I think I'm going for in some of these videos, is not just the work itself being the goal, but the actual process being something that I am working toward. And it is in that process that I think I find my favorite pieces. It's the process, it's the pieces that end up being a unique process or a unique shape or a hidden gem that I enjoy the most. I think it's also why I get kind of captivated by forms. I've been very kind of intrigued by sort of toroid shapes, that sort of, even in this piece, even though it's more angular and more sharp-edged, it's still that sort of balanced toroidal shape at the end that I find very fascinating right now. It's the one that I've been drawn to the most when making various pieces, is explorations of that form. And again, that's something that draws me to other crafts folks. I'm intrigued by the shapes that they impart to their creations, the different forms that they're able to capture when they're working with the materials that they work with. It's in those shapes, I think, that we find magic, the beauty and the hidden kind of... I think it's in those shapes that we find the hidden magic. That's, again, as I'm turning and revealing hidden aspects of the wood, I'm turning away sort of a base, ugly layer of either faded wood or bark or what have you, and revealing underneath the beauty that lies within. And that in and of itself can be a kind of a philosophical thought, that the beauty of the wood is not necessarily surface level. You have to dive deep into the piece to unearth kind of what's hidden. And in that moment, you're turning away the base outer layers and revealing the beauty that's within. It's a very interesting sort of philosophical concept to noodle around with. And these are the things that run through my head from time to time as I'm turning. Again, my practice is very meditative. I find myself getting lost in the process itself. It's very calming a lot of the times when I've had a bad day or I'm in need of something to set my mind to a better place. I can find that in the workshop. I can find, as I turn, peace within the piece, peace within the process. And at the end of the day, it makes my life better. And that's the end goal of this channel as well, is sharing the beauty that I find within the wood, within my work, with whoever wants to watch. And in so sharing, I hope I bring beauty to your day as well. I want to say thank you to anybody who made it to the end of this video and watched my rambling philosophical discussion about woodworking and pottery. So, in true YouTuber fashion, I'll ask you to leave a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, come back for the next video. I've been doing this now for 2 months. This is my 8th video. I'm doing weekly releases right now, so if you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed meditations on woodworking, feel free to let me know, or just tell me to go back to the music and turning and stop rambling about weird thoughts around what's hidden beneath wood. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.